Taxes, exciting stuff, I know. We do get a fair amount of people asking us about taxes in Oregon, not just property taxes. We have an entire video dedicated on property taxes if you want to watch that next, but any tax that you might pay either living in Oregon or goods or services that are taxed in Oregon that might make your cost of living a little bit higher than wherever it is that you're coming from. I'm going to cover all that now. All right, so first thing, you probably know this, we don't have any sales tax in the state of Oregon. Not having any sales tax, that does often prompt the question, well, if you don't have any sales tax, where does Oregon get its revenue? You're going to see here in this video. That does include online. Sometimes people ask us about that. Well, what if I order something online from another state? Do I have to pay taxes? No, you're not going to pay sales tax when you purchase something online either. We're going to start with income tax here. So single filers and filing jointly kind of topping out right at about 10%. Oregon skews a little bit on the higher side relative to the rest of the country. This is just taxable income from the state. There is in some cities, specifically we'll talk about Portland in just a moment, for higher income earners, there are additional income taxes that you'll pay. Here are some of Oregon's excise taxes, so taxes that are going to increase the cost of some goods. Gasoline tax, so we're going to impose a state gasoline tax of 36 cents per gallon. Now, if you're coming from California, I've talked to a lot of Californians about this. Their gas is also very expensive. I think us in California are probably right up there at the very top. I've checked gas prices in other parts of the country in the past, and Oregon always seems to be right up there at the very top, and this is one reason why. Do you have a cigarette tax? I think a lot of states have a cigarette tax. I'm not exactly sure where that falls. I would imagine most states that allow marijuana do tax that, which is probably about half the country at this point. We have a beer and a wine tax as well, which is huge here in Oregon, breweries, wineries. One of the many great things about living in Oregon, we have some of the best beer and wine in the state. We also have an estate tax as well. That starts at properties, estates valued over $1 million. I'll take you to that chart here next. So this 0 to 500,000, this 10% rate, this is going to start after $1 million. So 1.5 million, the first 500,000 above $1 million, you're going to be looking at 10.3 up to 1.5 million. And then all the way up to 16%, capped out at 8.5 million and up. Here's a property tax. As I mentioned, we have a separate video on that if you want to take more of a deep dive into it. I'll just briefly cover what you need to know. There's 1,200 local taxing districts in Oregon, so there's a lot of tax districts, and tax rate is going to vary depending on the district that you're in. It's not easy to find out what that district is if you're just doing a Google search, by the way. Statewide average effective property tax 0.82%. I've seen some different numbers. I've seen as high as maybe 0.98%, something just under 1%, but that kind of puts us right about the middle of the pack as far as the rest of the country goes. Now, if you have questions about property tax on a specific property, the best thing to do is to get with us, the Home Team Brokers. My name is Seth Marchant. I'm a licensed broker in the state of Oregon. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, you'd like to know more about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to take the next steps in moving to Oregon, if you have questions like this about property taxes, you can call, email, or click the link below if you want to schedule a Zoom call with us in the description of this video down below here on YouTube. Here's the important part of what you need to know about property taxes in Oregon. We have a measure that was passed back in 97, 98, Measure 50. And so one common question, this question seems to come from California a lot, but question would be, when I buy a property, is it going to get reassessed? And is the new sales price going to be what I pay taxes on? A lot of people seem to think that they're going to pay taxes on the sales price of the property. That's not going to be the case. You are essentially just going to pick back up where the former seller left off. So there's a measure that was passed that basically caps the growth to 3% annually. Assessments are done by a local county, so taxes are based on the lower the real market value, RMV, or a maximum assessed value, MAV. So there's going to be 2 assessments for your property. You're going to pay the lower of the 2, and it cannot be more than 3% of what the previous year's property tax was. So with growth the way it's been up until recently, you're typically looking at just tacking on an extra 3% of whatever the property taxes were for the previous year. Now, as it stands right now in 2023, and values kind of starting to correct or level off from their meteoric rise over the past couple of years, might not actually pay that 3%. Aside from that 3%, voters can approve new short-term option levies to fund additional services or bond measures for capital improvements. So you're typically going to be paying some number, maybe 10 or 20%, kind of in my experience, maybe 25% at the most, of what your property taxes are for local levies. So as real estate brokers, we're going to have a pretty good idea of what taxes are going to be the following year based on the previous year. Don't just go back by your neighbor's or maybe a friend's property that you know of. Again, there's 1,200 local taxing districts in Oregon. So you're going to find that taxes for one house might be a lot different than a house just a couple doors down. Really can't use other houses as a guide for what taxes would be for a particular house. It's just going to be house by house. And the best way to determine that is to get with us. Now, some of these websites like Zillow or realtor.com, sometimes you're going to have tax information. It's usually pretty accurate, but all of that data is entered in by humans, so that leaves the margin for error. So sometimes that stuff is incorrect. So definitely don't go off of Zillow or realtor.com or just whatever you're reading online. Get with us and we'll find the true amount that you would expect to pay. Now, if you are a business owner, like many of our clients have been in the past, you're also going to have to factor in what you're going to pay for your business. City doesn't really provide us with any kind of comprehensive data to kind of forecast what that might be. Definitely want to get with an accountant, but I wanted to point out there are some things that you are going to encounter, and business taxes, specifically in Multnomah County, do tend to be higher than some of the other surrounding counties and some of the other states. So other places where people are coming from, you might find that Portland's taxes for businesses are going to be higher than what you're used to. This graph is taken from a study that was done from the Portland Business Alliance. You can actually find it at portlandalliance.com/2023. And there's a few other graphs in here that I wanted to show you that kind of stuck out to me. So they compared, just as an example, a food manufacturer, and they looked at revenue and how much revenue that manufacturer would keep depending on where they were located at. So if you had 8.3%, earnings pre-tax, so if your business was across the river in the state of Washington, across the Columbia River, that is, in Vancouver, you'd keep about 5.2%. Beaverton, which is in Washington County, Portland, the Portland metro area is a tri-county area. Multnomah County is where Portland is. Then you have Washington and Clackamas County. So if you're in Beaverton, you'd keep about 4.4%. If you're in Lake Oswego, which is in Clackamas County, the other county, you'd keep 4.4%. And then if you're in Portland, you would only keep 3.9%. They used a few other on the website, but I'll show you one more example. So an engineering services firm, they had about 23.9% pre-tax earnings. They would keep almost 15% in Vancouver, 13.6% in Beaverton, same thing in Lake Oswego, same thing in Clackamas and Washington County. They only keep 12.8% in Portland. So it's more expensive in the Portland metropolitan area and the tri-county area to do business and to have a business that resides in Multnomah County as opposed to Clackamas or Washington County. And back to some of those taxes I mentioned about income for people living in Portland. In 2020, voters in Greater Portland approved measures to raise money for supportive housing services, people experiencing homelessness or risk of experiencing homelessness. So the SH program, partially funded by 1% personal income tax, is owed by individuals with metro taxable income above $125,000 if filing single or $200,000 filing jointly. Another similar tax here, the preschool tax, which is a 1.5% tax. Again, income over $125,000 for individuals, $200,000 for joint filers. And this takes me back to the article I was at the very beginning, came out just about a month ago. Report high tax rates could be driving people out of Portland. And here's the surprising number. Portland's income tax rate, so everything put together, the highest earners are going to pay 14.7%. It's only second to New York City, but here's the real kicker. This comes in at $125,000 like we just saw, whereas New York, you have to get all the way up to $25 million of income to hit their highest rate. So for most high-income earners, Portland is going to be the most expensive city to live in the United States as far as income tax goes. Multnomah County's had the highest marginal tax rates in the United States of America, but we don't have the income to support that level of taxation, says Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler. Wheeler says it's going to be difficult to bring downtown back if people with disposable income are chased off. And then finally, we have a corporate activity tax passed back in 2019. Wanted to point this out because this is a business tax, but sometimes businesses pass taxes along to their customers. And I actually experienced this recently for the first time with this specific tax. So businesses generating with activity more than $1 million, so businesses generating $1 million of revenue or more, paying 0.75%. I thought it was 1%, but I guess it's 0.57% tax of taxable Oregon commercial activity more than $1 million. Okay, so where did this come into play for me recently? I bought a new car recently, and the car dealer put this on the purchase order. They did have another tax on there as well, but I asked them about that, and if you've ever bought a car before, as somebody that knows car dealers, I know people that own car dealerships. Car dealers will try and squeeze in as many taxes or fees or anything they can add on additional to that purchase price as possible. And many times they're going to tell you that there's nothing they can do about it. It's just a fee. It's like a cost that they have to include. Their hands are tied. They can't take that cost off. But we certainly don't. When you buy a car, you certainly don't have to pay the corporate activity tax. The business is required to pay that tax. The buyer is not required to pay that tax. The business is simply passing that tax along. Any other dealers that are watching this, feel free to weigh in, but I've seen this enough times at this point to know that there are no other fees. The only fees that you have to pay when you buy a car are registration fees for your local DMV, and you're typically going to be buying license plates as well. Anything else, like a dealer will typically have a doc fee, documentation fee. It's all just profit. They're all just putting that towards their bottom line. That money doesn't go somewhere else. In the corporate activity tax case, yeah, it's that tax is going to the state, but all businesses are paying state taxes. We pay payroll taxes. As a business owner myself, I know that businesses pay a handful of different taxes. It's up to the business on what they actually want to pass along to the consumer. And in the state of Oregon, if you're buying a car, you might end up getting the corporate activity tax passed along to you. How much was it for me? It was about $500, just under $500. They did have another tax that they couldn't really even describe what it was that was about the same. So I ended up paying about $900 in additional taxes. I ended up sticking with that dealer because they gave me the best overall price, but none of us want to pay something that we don't have to pay or any sort of additional profit that a business tells us that's mandatory, especially when it's really not. So I hope that gave you a better sense of what type of taxes you might encounter, either paying or services or goods that you might purchase that might be a little bit more expensive in Oregon due to taxes. Again, if you want to see more about property taxes, watch the entire video that we have dedicated to that. And if you're somebody that's thinking about taking the next steps, moving to Oregon, if you have questions about buying a home in Oregon, you can call us, text us, email us, or click the link below in the description. Feel free to weigh in the comments too. There's probably a handful of other taxes. Well, I know there are throughout the state of Oregon that cities might pass along to people. So there's going to be a few little other things here and there. If you know about one of those, you want to comment below and let people know, feel free to do so. And if you've made it this far in the video and you want to see more videos, you're thinking about moving to Oregon, you want to see what it's like here, definitely make sure and hit that subscribe button. Until next time, take care, everyone.